നമസ്കാരം. നമ്മളിന്ന് കാണാൻ പോകുന്ന സ്ഥലം എസെക്സ് കൗണ്ടിയിൽ ഉള്ള ഒരു കാസിലാണ്. ഈ കാസിലിൻ്റെ പേര് കോൾച്ചസ്റ്റർ കാസിൽ എന്നാണ്. നോർമൻ എറയിൽ ഉണ്ടാക്കിയ ഒരു കാസിലാണിത്. അതായത് AD 54 to 60 ഉണ്ടാക്കിയതാണ് ഈ കാസിൽ. വളരെ പഴയതാണ്. ഏകദേശം 2000 വർഷത്തോളം പഴക്കമുള്ള ഒരു കാസിലാണ് ഈ കാസിൽ. പിന്നെ എസെക്സ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ലണ്ടനിൻ്റെ നോർത്ത് സീയുടെയും ടുവേർഡ്സ് നോർത്ത് സീയിൽ സ്ഥിതി ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരു സ്ഥലമാണ് ഈ എസെക്സ്. അവിടുത്തെ കോൾച്ചസ്റ്റർ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന സ്ഥലത്താണ് ഈ കോൾച്ചസ്റ്റർ കാസിൽ ഉള്ളത്. വളരെ പുരാതനമായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു കാസിലാണ്. ഇത് ഒരുപാട് ഇൻവെൻഷൻസ്, ഒരുപാട് പുതിയ ടെക്നോളജീസ് എല്ലാം അന്നത്തെ കാലത്ത് അവർ യൂസ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു കാസിലാണ് ഈ നമ്മൾ കാണുന്ന കാസിലും കണ്ടുപിടിക്കാനുണ്ട്. അവരുടെ പുരാതനമായിട്ടുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ സൂക്ഷിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്, അത് നല്ലോണം പ്രിസർവ് ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്, ഒരുപാട് എഫർട്ട് അവർ എടുക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. പിന്നെ ഇത് ശരിക്കും പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഞാനൊരു ഗൈഡഡ് ടൂർ ആണ് ഇന്ന് പ്ലാൻ ചെയ്യുന്നത്. ഗൈഡഡ് ടൂർ ഒരു അലൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ഒരു ഗൈഡാണ് ഞങ്ങളുടെ കൂടെ ഇന്നത്. ഇതിനെപ്പറ്റി കൂടുതൽ അറിയാനും മനസ്സിലാക്കാനും വേണ്ടി ഞങ്ങളൊരു ഗൈഡിനെ ഞാനും എൻ്റെ ഫ്രണ്ട് റോയും കൂടി ചേർന്നിട്ട് ആ ഒരു ഗൈഡഡ് ടൂറാണ് ഓപ്ഷൻ നമ്മൾ ചെയ്തിരിക്കുന്നത്. നമ്മൾ അതിനകത്തോട്ട് എൻ്റർ ചെയ്യാൻ പോവുകയാണ്. ഇപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ കാണുന്നത് പഴയ കാലത്തുള്ള പടച്ചട്ടയും അവരുടെ ഭരണികളും പഴയ റോമാക്കാർ ഉപയോഗിച്ചിരുന്ന കപ്പുകളും അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെയുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങളാണ് നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ കണ്ടുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നത്. ഇതവർ നല്ലോണം മനോഹരമായിട്ട് അവർ പ്രിസർവ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. സോ ഹാറ്റ്സ് ഓഫ് ടു ദ കോൾച്ചസ്റ്റർ അതോറിറ്റീസ്. അപ്പോൾ നല്ലോണം അവർ മാനേജ് ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്. ഇതൊരു പ്രാർത്ഥന ഒക്കെയുള്ള പുസ്തകമാണ്. ഇത് പണ്ടത്തെ വെയിറ്റർമാർ യൂസ് ചെയ്ത് ഏകദേശം 1000 വർഷം പഴക്കമുള്ളതാണ്. ഇത് ഏകദേശം 500 വർഷം പഴക്കമുള്ളൊരു വെയിറ്റേഴ്സിൻ്റെ ഡ്രസ്സാണ്. പിന്നെ അവരുടെ പണ്ടത്തെ കുറച്ച് കാര്യങ്ങൾ, എന്താ പറയുന്നത്, പണ്ടത്തെ കുറച്ച് കോയിൻസും അതും ഇതൊക്കെയാണ്.
Hey, my name's Alan. Hi, Alan. Taking you around today. How many stairs did you count? 21? If you think of each step as being 100 years, you've come down from the 21st century to the 1st century. Many years. This was built in the year 54. Now, if you can take yourself through the archway there and take a seat, but I will warn you, there's quite a low arch. There's even lower ones later, so practice your limbo skills now. See you next door. He's got a large group, actually. Beautiful?
No. Midgets.
Okay, good afternoon. Anybody here from the Colchester area? Nobody? Okay, anybody from a long way away? Where are you from?
Stoke-on-Trent.
That's quite a distance, about 200 miles, I suppose.
From India.
India?
Yeah.
Where in India?
Kerala.
Oh, I've been there, lovely. And 2 days' time I'm going to Kolkata.
Oh, is it?
Bengal.
Fantastic.
Okay. Anybody else from a foreign country? No? Well, welcome everybody anyway. Excuse the slight twitch. I've got a trapped nerve in my face today, and ladies, I'm not winking at you. Okay, let's take you back in time to the year 40 AD. In the year 40. This is Great Britain in the year 40. These are all different tribes of Celtic people. And this is Colchester, where we are now, and the tribe is a Trinovantes tribe here. London's about here. They were all Celtic, they all spoke the same language, the Celtic language. And even in what we now call France, Belgium, Holland and Germany were also Celtic speakers, so they could trade with each other and speak with each other. And it was the first European Union, it worked. Now, Colchester wasn't called Colchester then, it was called Camulodunum, after the god of war, the Celtic god of war, Camulos. And the king in the year 40 was a man many of you may have heard about, King Cunobalin. No, you haven't, you're saying? Yes, you have. Children's nursery rhyme, Old King Cole. He was the one. That was him. He did exist. Whether he was a merry old soul, I'm not quite sure. Certainly, that was where they lived. Now, in the year 40, Cunobalin was quite an old man. And the Celtic people lived in houses like these. They're round, built by the Celtic people. Guess what we call them? Celtic roundhouses. Isn't that hard, is it? Thatched roof, twin tree trunks through a door, not a door as we know it, just a cloth hanging down. And tree trunks going round and round and round, and between each tree trunk, thin tree trunks, was a wall made of basket work like this. But it wouldn't keep the wind out, would it? And they got mud or clay and put it onto the basket work and closed it up. They call it wattle and daub. You still see this today, don't you, in many parts of the world? I've seen it in parts of your country in India. I've seen it in parts of South Africa, in Central America, South America, West Indies, and in Indonesia. You still see it today. And do you know what? It's free. No mortgage. And it seems to work. Now, of course, once you've got mud on the door, on the walls rather, if the rain hits it, it washes it out. So how could you stop that? So perhaps one day a guy sits in the field and a cow walks past and drops a poo. And he sits and looks at it. And within minutes it forms a skin. And then half an hour later it begins to rain. The rain hits the skin and bounces off. And he thinks, I know. Mix the poo with the clay or the mud on the walls. It's windproof and waterproof. It worked. Just smelled horrible. Okay, now, the people could work with metal. This was the Iron Age. This was 40 AD still. And they could make knives and pots and pans and all sorts of metal things, and even jewellery, gold and silver, etc. And they copied the Roman idea of having coins to use as money. And they had gold, silver and bronze. And this is a large copy of one of their gold coins. The real size was about the English 5-pence piece, a very small piece. Coin. CAMU on the one side means Camulodunum, the town. On the other side, CUNO, short for Cunobalin, the king. Like I say, it's about the same size as a 5-pence piece. There are a few upstairs in the museum. If you go around, you'll see them. And they had the writing which the Romans used as well. They copied the Roman idea of writing. The king would wear one of these to show he was the king, but not here, but around his neck. It's called a torque, T-O-R-C. It would have been gold, not just metal like this is. Okay, now the king died in the year 42. When he died, down in Rome, in Italy, the Roman emperor, a man called Caligula, heard about it. So here's Caligula in Rome here. It is in Rome is here. The whole Roman Empire is a bigger empire. It goes from Portugal, Spain, France, Belgium, Germany, Holland, right the way down into Greece, round the Black Sea, into Turkey, down to the Holy Land, and across to North Africa. It was a huge, big empire. And the Romans were actually quite arrogant. They even called the Mediterranean Sea Mare Nostrum, which in English means our sea. Quite arrogant, isn't it? The Emperor Caligula lived here in Rome. He heard that the king here had died. So he said to his army, let's go and attack Britannia and go and capture it, because the king's died and they've got gold coins there. So the army said, nah, we don't like your plan, it's terrible. They took him outside, executed him and all of his family. It's not great being an emperor, is it? And there was a cousin hiding in the back of the palace, a man of 50 called Claudius. They made him the emperor, the next emperor. They said to him, do as you're told. And he said, okay. The poor man was born with 2 birth defects. First of all, he had a bad stutter, and he stammered badly when he spoke and couldn't be understood. And secondly, his foot was turned in like a club foot, and he walked like this with great difficulty. But he lived to be 50, and he was still alive. And they said, okay, we've got a plan. We want to go and attack Britannia ourselves. We've got our own plan, better than Caligula's. So the new emperor, thinking, I better keep them sweet, he said, okay, I'll go with it. So they got 85,000 men together in Rome, began to march across Europe, picking up more along the way, because they owned all of these parts anyway. They got here with about 135,000 men at the beginning of the year 43, spring 43. And then he was there, he said, okay, you go across, I'll join you a few days later. Wasn't stupid, was he? Didn't want to get killed. However, the Romans, having a strong army anyway, had a secret weapon. They brought elephants with them. North African elephants, well, South African elephants, which they brought up through Africa, and they took them across the channel here. Which does beg one question, how do you get an elephant on a sailboat? But they did it, got across the channel, and very quickly the Celtic peoples ran away. We would, wouldn't you? The big elephant running towards you. And very quickly they captured the southern half of Britain. And they came to Colchester. They wrongly thought that Colchester was the capital city of Britannia. It wasn't. It was just the biggest city, 30,000 people. Not many today, but quite a big place for those days. And they came up to Colchester, which was not where it is today. It was about 1 mile or 1.5 kilometres that way to the west, not very far away. And they looked around, and they weren't that impressed. So Canobalin was dead by this time, and so there was no real king around, so they killed everybody they could find. And then the Emperor Claudius joined them in about March or April of 43. And he said to his soldiers, okay, we've captured this town, we don't like it, I'm going to look around. And he came to where we are now. This is a small sandy hill, about 35 metres or about 50, 60 feet or so above sea level, not very high, just a low hill of sand. There's sand under that carpet. And he said, okay, look down the hill there, there's a river about 500 yards away, 500 metres away. He says, fresh water to drink. And it flows into the sea 800 metres down there. A port, he thinks. And behind us this side, there's a dry valley with no river in it. So Claudius thinks, I know, this is a perfect place for a capital city. Let's put a fence around it 2 miles long, because we've got fresh water there, a port there, and a good defensive site. It's on a hill. He puts a gate that end. And he says to his men, okay, the wooden fence is done. In the square where Debenhams, the shop, is today, Culver Square, in that square, he said, okay, I want you to build a barracks for you soldiers to keep warm in the winter. A wooden barracks. We found it about 40 years ago, under the ground, all burnt down, but we found what remains of it. And then he said, on this side here, where you're now standing or sitting, on here, let's build a temple to our gods. You know, Mercury, Venus, Juno, Mars, all that lot. Saturn, they worship them all. And he said, we'll call it after me, we'll call it the Temple of Claudius. Again, quite arrogant. And he changed the name of the town from Camalodunum to, quite a mouthful this, Colonia Claudia Victrescensis, which means the colony of Claudius the Victor. Again, quite arrogant. It's quite a mouthful, isn't it? It's too many words. He went back to Rome, never came back, and he stayed there for 11 more years. But meanwhile, back here, the Roman soldiers shortened the name because it was too long. The Latin word for a fort in their times is a castra. So they call this, they kept the first word, the colonia bit, the colony. They called it Colonia Castra, from which a bit later in Anglo-Saxon times became Colchester. And today, Colchester. You can see how it grew up, can't you, bit by bit. Goes back to the original Roman times. And he was back in Rome, was Claudius, and when he died, I say he died, he was executed by his mother and his sister. Again, he's even worse being an emperor, isn't it? They hated him, so they killed him. So back here, the soldiers were very proud of him, because he was the only reigning Roman emperor ever to come to Britain. I know Julius Caesar had been here 90 years before, but he wasn't the emperor at the time, just a general in the army. High enough, but not the boss man. So they were proud of Claudius here, and they decided to change this temple from a wooden temple to a stone temple. And then they realised that this part of England has got no stone, none at all. Underground here there's sand, as I told you, but down the hill there is clay. And all over this whole area, the whole of the county of Essex, it's either clay or sand or grit or pebbles. There's no real stone at all. So they thought, what would they use for stone? So they went up the coast up in Harwich, about 15 miles away today. It's a muddy clay shore. And if you get a very hot summer, like we had last summer in this country, temperature of 30 degrees every day, if the tide's out, the clay gets baked by the sun, naturally baked. And they dug the piles of clay in lumps this big. Naturally made bricks as opposed to making bricks in an oven. And this stuff here you see is what it is. This is not stone at all. This is actually baked clay. Listen, sounds like stone. It's actually baked clay. They gave it a name, Septeria. They built the temple with this stuff. Okay, pop yourself through there and take a seat next door. And there's some benches facing this way towards the pictures on the wall, please. I'm going to get you through in time. I'll get told off when the next group comes along. Okay. We asked guides, asked the castle authorities if they could put all these pictures here onto that projector so we could press the remote control and press it and go on the wall over there. And they said yes. They put it up there and then they realised that it's slightly damp in the air here. And damp and electricity don't quite go together. And it kept on cutting out on us, so we abandoned it, went back to the old pictures again. So here we are, I'm sorry. Here is the sandy hill. And the Romans had made the Celtic people into slaves. And the slaves dug 3 long ditches or trenches in the sand. 1, 2, 3. You've been to a beach. You dig a hole in the sand, what happens to the sides? They all fall in, don't they? So they put wooden planks along the trenches here to hold the sand back. And then they went to Harwich along the coast and got this septeria stuff, this baked clay, and brought it up here and mixed it up with the cement, which is a lime mortar, very strong cement, and dumped it in the 3 ditches. And that started in the year 54, the year Claudius had died. And then they took about 6 years to build it, 4 years to build it rather, 6 years, that's right. And they built the flat platform, or podium, as they call it. So that one there is that one there, that thin one is that one, and that one there is that one, not quite full yet, but nearly full. They began to build the pillars and the walls up. And by 60 or 61, it was nearly finished. Not quite sure which year it was. Bit of a problem then. Up in Norfolk, about 100 miles north of here, there was a king called Prasutagus, the king of the Iceni tribe. He died. And in his will, he left half of his money to his wife, a lady called Boudica. I was taught Boadicea at school, but correctly Boudica. And she was the queen. She was left half the money for her and her 2 teenage daughters. And the Romans came up to Norfolk to get the money from her. And she said, here's your half. And they said, no, we want all of it. So they beat her up. They whipped her. I'm afraid they raped the 2 girls and took all the money. Now you can imagine, she, the 2 girls, and the entire tribe were incensed by this. They had an army of 150,000 men and came down to Colchester to teach the Romans a lesson. Well, lucky, the Roman army wasn't here. It was across in Wales, 200 miles away, and in Anglesey, North Wales. And they got into the town very quickly. And they got over the fences and came to the temple and put all the Roman citizens, soldiers and civilians, inside the temple, closed the door. Killed all the local people in the streets, 30,000 people in 4 days. And then she sent her soldiers on the roof and pulled a few tiles off and set fire to the wooden beams underneath. The whole lot began to collapse and fall down on the people inside. They were either hit by the beams or the tiles, or by the burning beams, they were burnt to death, or smoke inhalation, just died. It must have been horrible inside there. But having killed them all, she then went down to a small fishing village on the River Thames called London. Did the same thing down there, killed them all, and then began to march home, going to Norfolk. She gets as far as a town we now call St Albans in Hertfordshire, and finds there's a small Roman town there called Verulamium, and she kills everyone there. She's going home to Norfolk. She's nearly home, but the Roman army comes back from Wales. They find her. We don't know where. Somewhere, we think possibly Northamptonshire, we're not quite sure where. And she's either killed in battle, or she commits suicide, or just runs away. That's the end of her. So the Romans come back to Colchester and they begin to rebuild the temple. Look what they use, the same foundations again. Okay, exactly the same. There was a statue of Claudius at the back we know about. And it was rebuilt in a few years. And it stayed as a temple to the Roman gods for a number of years. It says 300 there. And it began to become a Christian church in about 320. What happened was this. In 320, there was a general here. No, just before that, in the year 280, the general was based here. He went back to Rome to meet the new emperor, a guy called Constantius, who he knew from when they were boys. And this general took his wife and his daughter, a girl called Helena, who were both living in Rome. He was on duty over here. He took them to see the emperor. And the emperor took one look at the 18-year-old daughter and said, I like you, can I marry you? So the general, of course, gives his permission, and straight away his daughter is the Empress of Rome. This general was very, very proud, as he would be. He came back here to Colchester on duty, leaving his wife and his daughter, who's now married to the Emperor Constantius, in Rome. Within a year, Constantius and Helena have a son, a boy called Constantine, the great Emperor Constantine, who becomes the Emperor of Rome in around the year 305. And he was the man who founded the city of Istanbul, Constantinople, in Turkey. And he didn't like Christians in the year 300-ish. And his father and he were killing any Christians they found. So when he became the emperor, he carried on killing the Christians in the Colosseum with gladiators, or hanging them or crucifying them anyway. But one day, in about 305, his mother, Helena, went to him and she said, look, I'm a Christian. The daughter of the general from this town here. She said, I'm a Christian, are you going to kill me too? And he said, of course not. You're my mother, I won't kill you. Okay, she said, keep me two promises. One, let Christianity grow. It'll probably die out in a few years. He said, okay, and he passed a law letting Christianity grow. Do you know what? Within 20 years, the whole empire was Christian. The second promise was to become a Christian himself. He kept his promise. A few hours before he died, perhaps the day before, he called for a priest and he was baptized a Christian. So technically, he was the first Christian emperor of Rome, all because of her. Here in this town, even though she never came here, we have made her our patron saint of Colchester because of the fact that she brought Christianity to the whole Western world, even though she never came here herself. So she's the patron saint of Colchester. More about her later. Okay, and this became a Christian church, and it stayed as such from 320 onwards, right the way through, we think, to around 600 or 700, when it became a Christian town again. And the Anglo-Saxons were living here by that time. What had happened was this. In 410, the Roman army had left and gone back to Rome, leaving the Anglo-Saxons to take over the area. They came across the North Sea, the Angles from Denmark, and the Saxons from Germany. They were neighbours, they spoke the same language, Anglo-Saxon, a German language. So the Celtic people have moved away, the Romans have moved away, just leaving the Anglo-Saxons. This was an Anglo-Saxon area. And Colchester was the capital city of the East Saxons. Those two words, East Saxon, became one, Essex. Make sense? Around London, the Middle Saxons, you got it, haven't you? Middlesex. South of England, South Saxons, Sussex. In the west of England, the West Saxons, Wessex. So this was the East Saxons here. It became a very important town in Colchester. And by the year 1066, we got a new king. The king from France, Duke of Normandy, William. King William the Conqueror captured the whole of England after the Battle of Hastings in 1066. Was crowned on the day after Christmas Day in Westminster Abbey in 1066. And he said to his architect, a man called Gundulf, not Gandalf from Lord of the Rings, he said, will you please build me 3 castles, one in Rochester in Kent to control the River Thames, one in London, the Tower of London, to control London, and one in Colchester to control that part of England. So Gundulf used the same plan for each of the 3 castles. So good was the plan, they're all 3 still standing today, 1,000 years later. And he came to Colchester and he found the remains of the old temple on the same foundation there. And he knocked down the last bits of it. He knocked down these houses back here and he got some bricks from there. And using this sectarian stuff and the bricks from there, he built the castle over here. Look what he used, the same foundations. Why not? It's there. And he went up 1, 2, 3 floors, and then the 4th floor became the battlements here. And it took him about 6 years to build that. It stayed as a castle here for 600 years or so, and then it was changed into a jailhouse at the end of the Civil War in the 1660s. It became Essex County Jail for a few years, and then they sold it off, didn't want it at the end of the Civil War, and they sold it off to local builders to knock it down, to use the septaria and the bricks again, a third time. And one day in 1683, a man called John Wheely exploded about 6 feet, about this high, about 2 meters, off the top of the wall, and one big stone hit the centre of the floor here and knocked a big hole in the floor. And in the hole, he found 2 Roman gold coins. He thinks, great, I found treasure, I'm a rich man. He stopped digging the top off, and he went on the back of the castle, and dug underneath, under the wall here, under the Norman wall. He came into the Roman foundations here. And he dug all the sand out and took it out by horse and cart, looking for gold. Guess how much he found? Not a penny. Gave up the whole idea, and then they turned it back into a jail again for a few years in the late 1600s. And then in 1700, he sold it to the lady who lived in the house at the front of the castle. She was a rich widow. She liked the castle and she liked the land around it. She bought the whole lot. And in 1722, her daughter was marrying our local member of parliament, and she gave it to them as a wedding present. The guy was called Charles Gray. He was quite a successful MP, apparently. And they both loved the castle so much that they decided to save it and stop it being knocked down. So he put a roof on the front of the castle. If you can see my fingers there, on the front there. And he put in big windows in the front of the castle there to put light into that big room, which he used as a library to read his books. He put a tower over the front there, over the staircase. You couldn't go up in a minute. By the front entrance where you came in, it's up there, that's that tower. And he put another tower up here, a small square one, which he used as an office to do his paperwork as an MP. If you like, he saved it. He didn't cover over the middle bit, though. And then in 1860, his great-grandchildren opened the castle as a museum, private museum. And then at the end of the First World War, the family couldn't manage it anymore, so they sold it to the town of Colchester, and the Colchester Borough Council bought it. We paid a huge amount of money for it. 1 penny. They gave it us, effectively, so it's now owned by the people of Colchester. And then in the 1930s, a few cracks occurred in the walls. I'll show you some of those later. So they put these horrible concrete walls in here to hold it up, because having dug the sand out, there was nothing holding it up. So they put these in, and it worked. Okay, now I'm going to take you through there. Oh, they're also covered over the middle. You through? Well done. Okay, you through? Yep. Okay. Sorry, mind your head, it hurts. Be careful. Oh, well done. Keep going. You know, right through here. Head down, you're fine. The back is going to hurt. Keep coming. This is a roof tile from about 2,000 years ago, and we know it was dried in the sun. How do I know that? Look, there's cat footprints across there. The cat walked across it. So the 2,000-year-old cat footprints. Can you see it? Just here. Look at that. Okay, now, this brick was picked up when it was still wet. Look, 1, 2, 3 fingerprints and a thumbprint from 2,000 years ago. And it's all a bit sticky now, because every primary school kid puts his fingers in it. Sticky fingers. Now, the Romans found Britain a bit cold in comparison to Rome. And they had in the north of Italy, in the mountains, a heating system for their homes called a hypercore system. You have hollow wall bricks, like this one here, I mustn't drop it. So hollow wall bricks like that, and similar ones under the floor. You have a slave light a fire, he pushes the hot air through the holes in the wall, through the holes under the floor, giving you warm walls and warm floors. So if you like, central heating 2,000 years ago. Can't do it today, can you? Can't get slaves. But it worked. Now then, we can work out how big this temple was, because we can measure from that side to that side. Agreed? Yeah. We can measure from that end to that end. Again, agreed. It's easy. But how tall was it? We don't know, because it's gone. Because the floor of the castle above is this floor of the temple. Same floor, but only above it now is just the castle, there's no temple. So how do you work it out? Well, I'll tell you how. When the Romans built a temple, they liked slender, narrow pillars at the front, not big fat ones like the Greeks liked. They liked slender ones. And if they built a pillar, it was, the height was always 9 times the width. I don't know why. Why not 10, but they chose 9. I thought it was beautiful looking. And if they didn't have any marble to make a marble pillar, they used bricks. This is a photograph I took in Portugal. There's some bricks, circles of bricks going up and up and up and up, making a pillar, only a short one here. And they plastered the outside of it, and they put painting on the plaster to make it look like marble. They cheated. There's a second picture here, right in the centre of Rome itself. I took this one as well, in the Roman Forum. This is a big tall pillar, lots of bricks, and can you see the plasterwork all over the top of the bricks? And also some lines down it to paint it to look like marble. That's right in the centre of Rome itself. They even cheated there in Rome. Okay, so down here, there's some of those Roman bricks, circular pillar bricks, from our pillars. 2 feet across. 2 times 9 is 18 feet tall. Even though it's gone, we can work it out from those. Now then, there's been a question about what that room in there was. Don't even bother looking, it's rubble down in there. We've dug for centuries. But there could have been there is a bar across there, look. There could have been a bar across here. Down here is a doorway, which has been bricked in. So we thought it must have been a cell, because it was a prison, after all, in the early days. But then we had an architect check these bricks and dated them to 1750. That's when the Member of Parliament was here. It wasn't a prison then. So what would you want to keep? Because I'll give you a clue. Down here it's a constant temperature, winter and summer. What would you want to keep under lock and key in there, away from the servants, under a constant temperature?
Wine.
Yes, you got it. Wine, yes, man after my own heart. Bottles of wine. Or even before fridges, cheese. Okay? We think it was a cheese cellar or a wine cellar. We can't prove it, but it seems to make sense. Right, we're going to go upstairs now, and top of the stairs, as quick as you can, because I'll talk too much. To a soldier with his chainmail coat on, called a hauberk. He's got a sword in the hand there, and a shield here. This is a soldier on horseback with a spear, or a lance. Those have been dated to between 1150 and 1250, so call it 1200. So 800-year-old graffiti. That's 2. And this one here is a 6-pointed star, called a hex mark, from the 1640s. Well, back in the 1640s, can you stand this up there? I'm defending it. We're going to have a sword fight. Swing your arm back. What's in your way? The wall. What's in my way? Nothing. So what advantage to me? 2, who's got the biggest staircase to move around? Me? So I've got 2 advantages. And thirdly, who's highest? Me. So as a defender, I've got 3 advantages over you, the attacker. But you could say to me, hold on, what if I was left-handed? Nobody liked lefties. Any lefties here? I'm sorry. People hated lefties for centuries and wouldn't let them train to be soldiers. If they were, they would train to use their right hand and not use their left hand. It goes back in time. No one liked them at all. Even back in Latin, Roman times, the Latin word for right is dexter. Did you get dexterous or dexterity in that? The Latin word for left is sinister. So you're a very sinister person, which has a different meaning today, doesn't it? So no one trusted them. Sadly, I'm now old enough to have been in primary school in the 1940s. And when I was in school, learning to read, about 5, and write, if the teacher saw I was left-handed, he or she would say, don't use that hand. Sit on it, put it in your pocket, or tie behind your back, but don't use it. And you weren't allowed to. You had to use your right hand, even though you could be lefty. And the teacher would walk around the schoolroom with a stick, a metre long or a metre rule, and would smack your hand with your fingers until they bled to stop you using it. That carried on until about the 1960s. It stopped. You may have heard your grandparents talking about it. It stopped now, thank goodness, but I can remember it happening. It's only recently that people stopped mistrusting left-handed people. We've now discovered that lefties are usually more intelligent. There you go. He says very quickly. We're going to go on the roof now, so as quick as you can up the stairs. Okay. June the 18th, when the British Army beat the French Army of Napoleon Bonaparte. I love bringing French tourists up here. Now, okay, we look after it today though. Now, over there, you can all see over there, you might see it from there as well, there's two towers. The first one is the town hall tower with a statue on top of a lady holding a cross. That's St. Helena, the mother of the Emperor Constantine. She was made a saint, and she, as I said before, she's the patron saint of Colchester. Now this is Colchester's badge. By the way, she's facing to the east towards Jerusalem. This is Colchester's badge. You can see it from where you are. I'll hold it carefully. Now, it's got various things on it because she went to Jerusalem in around the year 303 looking for relics of Jesus Christ. She allegedly found the true cross of Jesus. She picked it up, rested the base on the ground, and it was green living wood, and it burst into life and twigs grew out of it. Can you see there's twigs sticking out of the green cross? That particular cross is now in its own church in Rome called Santa Croce della Gerusalemme, the Holy Cross of Jerusalem Church. She also found the graves of the three kings who came to Jesus' birth. That's why there's three crowns on our crest. She also found the three nails that went into Jesus on the cross. There's a nail under each crown. She also found a bottle of Jesus' blood, hence the red. You know, you can sell anything to tourists, can't you? She believed it, and belief is important, isn't it? But there's something which most people here might not like to see. In the middle, where the cross crosses, there's a swastika, it looks like. Now, one way around is a swastika, other way around is called a Philfot, F-Y-L-F-O-T. And around the world has for 3,500 years meant peace and goodwill to all people. Now, I've seen it in China on Buddhist temples, meaning peace. I've seen it in India on Hindu temples, meaning peace. I've seen it in Christian churches all over Europe. I've seen it in North America, in Seattle, in Washington State, on the Pacific side of the USA, on a Native American Indian tent. And the guy with his big headdress on saw me looking at it, and he said, "We're not Nazis, brother. It means peace." And it always has done. And that's why we're leaving it on our crest, because it has never meant Nazis, as far as we're concerned, in this country. Although it has a horrible meaning for those horrible years of the war, doesn't it? But it always has meant peace. And even in County Hall in Chelmsford, in county town of Essex, it's painted on the wall there, meaning peace there as well. Okay, now over there's a second tower, a red brick tower with a green copper roof. And that is a water tower, now redundant. It was built in 1883, and when it was being built, the vicar of the priest in the church next door didn't like it because it was taller than his church. So he began to write a letter to the local paper complaining about it. Can you all hear, by the way? Yeah. And he's halfway through his letter when he hears a noise in the streets. And it was the American Barnum and Bailey Circus was in town. They just bought a big elephant from London Zoo called Jumbo. He goes back to his letter and he says, "You can scream and shout all you like about Jumbo in the streets, but I have a Jumbo in my backyard," meaning the water tower. The name stuck. We now lovingly call that tower Jumbo, and we've listed it. And it can't be knocked down. We're going to go across the roof here and down the stairs, okay? So follow me across.